Youth homelessness matters because the more awareness we can bring around it, the more actions that we can take to get young people off the streets. I just needed a breakthrough. I just needed somebody to just give me an opportunity to show what my skills are. And once I did get the opportunity, it opened up so many more doors for me. And it really helped me realize who I was as far as confidence levels, self-esteem. I was able to be myself and comfortable in my skin. And I feel like everybody should be able to feel that. The person that is on the street right now could be your brother, could be your sister, could be a family member of yours one day, because tomorrow is not promised and anybody can be put in that position. A lot of young people have a lot to offer. They just need an opportunity and somebody to believe in them.
Welcome back to the Impact Leaders series. It's my great pleasure to have with us today Jack Howes and Nick Pearce from HoMie. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. It's I must say that this is an issue that I think like a lot of Australians, it happens in the shadows of our cities. It happens when we're walking past people and often don't want to look, because it's confronting, or it reminds us that these are not issues happening in faraway countries, but that people both young and old, and especially it seems to touch a lot of youth in Australia, increasingly around our capital cities, who are being impacted by a number of issues that are largely outside of their control, and therefore can end up temporarily or even for long periods on the street. So it's a real honour for us to create this partnership with HoMie and learn about your work, learn about what inspired you, really be educated. These series are about understanding, doing a deep dive into what are often or almost always complex issues. So welcome to the series, Nick and Jack. I'd like to start, if I may, with asking both of you, where does your passion for social justice come from? If we can just step back, what was it, a moment? Was it a series of moments? What happened? Jack, perhaps if we could start with you.
Sure. Just first of all, thanks again for having us on to talk about it and for sharing that video. Every time I see it, I love it. So real pleasure. I think for me, in a lot of ways, it was something I was born into. My parents were activists, very heavily involved in the anti-apartheid movement. One of the first photos I have is a very, very young me with a much older Nelson Mandela. So I'm not sure I ever really had a choice but to be involved in things. And then spent a lot of years growing up in Cambodia as well, back and forth between Australia and Cambodia. And that really shaped my worldview about how much opportunity we have here and how much change still is needed, both at home and overseas.
Thanks, Jack. Nick, how about for you?
I didn't know that about you, Jack. That's awesome. So this is very informative.
That's what we do here. We go deep really quickly, so you're learning about each other.
No, thanks, Jeremy, for setting up as well. Look, I think for me, it's a really good question. Like, I actually think, for a long time I was quite indifferent towards a lot of things, and it probably took a personal experience that I'd had. It's actually our young people, who are just exiting the building. We just had a classroom today, but so there's a bit of noise outside. Apologies. But for me, I think actually, to be honest, like, totally frank, I was very indifferent towards a number of different things. A really loving, supportive family. I was very lucky growing up, went to a great school, etc. And I think when I was between finishing high school and then going into uni, I actually had a bit of a personal challenging situation where I found myself, without the lack of sort of stability and structure, experiencing some mental health challenges. And I actually got diagnosed with a mental illness in obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think, it was an incredibly challenging time and still managed that challenge on a daily basis, but I'm far better equipped to manage that. But I think it really opened my eyes to becoming a lot more empathetic as a person, and where I got quite passionate about wanting to try and do something for someone else, because I thought it was quite a lonely experience at my very worst, and I just didn't want anyone else to feel alone. And I got really passionate about just wanting to make one other person just know that, they're just not alone in this, because I knew what it felt like. And I think that really spurred for me a greater appreciation for the world of mental health and illness. And I realized that someone who had depression wasn't just sad, and needed to cheer up. There's so many elements to all of us living a happy and healthy life. So in a funny way, it's one of those things where, you wouldn't wish it upon your worst enemy. But at the same token, I'm actually quite appreciative of having gone through this experience, because I think it actually has made me a more empathetic person and made me care about things a lot more, where I was quite, glass-eyed growing up. So, it's actually been really nice in some ways to actually be exposed to, causes and trying to do something to make someone's life a bit easier.
It's true that for everyone who's committed to this sector and to making change, there seems to be a profound and life-changing experience or set of experiences that shapes them on this journey, such that I imagine you might feel you kind of don't have a choice but to do this work. And that's a very powerful thing to experience. So what does HoMie do? If you could share, perhaps Nick, if we could continue with you for now on why HoMie was created and what makes it unique as an organisation working with the issue of youth homelessness.
Yeah, look, HoMie is it's an organisation where we're a charity, registered charity, and we support young people affected by homelessness and hardship around skills, confidence and experiences to be more work ready and just generally better prepared for their futures. So in layman's terms, we sell T-shirts and we create employment pathways for young people who deserve a chance and a shot. And I think where it really sort of originated from was we had an experience, myself and one of the co-founders, on a fundraising bicycle ride many years ago, riding from Vietnam to Cambodia, raising funds and awareness for anti-child trafficking. And it was for one school in a really remote region of Cambodia. And it was really interesting because we raised around 40,000 Australian dollars, and obviously goes a little way over there. And the feedback was, there are so many things we could do with this money. What we really need more than anything is we actually need to retain our teachers. We're finding that time and time again, our teachers are being poached out of these rural areas into the city, greater standard of living for them, greater remuneration, etc. If we haven't got a school, we haven't got a teacher, we haven't got a school, we haven't got a school, our children are in, fields, etc., vulnerable to exploitation. So for us, it was a real aha moment around, okay, where are we best placed to make the best possible impact from the outset? And I think we got quite passionate about wanting to try and do something back home, because that experience was quite profound. Obviously, as you say, there's a series of often these inflection points. What can we be doing back home? And obviously, homelessness is just so prevalent, and we were seeing it on our daily commutes to uni, to work, etc. And seeing the situation of people who are living rough in particular getting worse and worse. So we actually just one day decided, let's just go and have a chat to someone, get down to the level, look them in the eye, shake their hand, and just get to know them a bit better and understand what we can actually do. And it was really interesting because I think for me, it was one of those things, again, at that time I was really learning about, causes, etc., and what making change really meant and all the rest of that. And what was quite interesting was that the first person we spoke to actually had gone to my school. And as I mentioned, I had a very fortunate upbringing. I went to a private boys' school in Melbourne, and, we had this commonality of, same teachers. And I was like, I was trying to compute how is this person who'd had these similar experiences to myself found themselves in this situation, and we know that all of us are only a few steps away, and there are things that are outside of our control, which can lead to us ultimately being at risk or experiencing homelessness. And I got really passionate about that because I felt that, there was such a misrepresentation. It was often language that was, I saw a homeless person or homeless persons, etc. And I really felt that it was very much, well, this is not a homeless person. This is a person experiencing homelessness. This is a situation and a circumstance that we knew people could get out of with the right level of support and opportunity. So we were quite optimistic about that. And what we decided to do, because I think, as I say, we were really, motivated by the fact that there was such a misrepresentation of homelessness in Australia, and that, the stereotypical person was someone with the grey hair and beard on the streets who was abusing substance or alcohol. And we knew the reality is so far contrasted. I'm sure we'll get to that in terms of the reality of what it looks like in Australia. But we just felt it was such a shame that this is how the issue was portrayed and perpetuated through the mainstream media. So we decided to advocate, and we created a Facebook page. It was essentially adapting the Humans in New York model to share the stories of these people with their consent and in their own words to try and dispel some of these preconceived notions towards homelessness. that ended up being quite a powerful movement, and our stories are sort of reaching, I think at its peak, around 500,000 people, and really challenging, as I say, some of those stereotypes. And I guess we wanted to do more by that. We're really buoyed by the fact that we were encouraging these really positive interactions and conversations. People saying, "Oh, I walked past Joe today and I'd read their story, and I've actually walked past them for the last few years, but it was the first time I'd actually felt comfortable speaking to them because, you know, I read their story and realized we love the same music, and, you know, we got talking about that, and it was an awesome conversation." So that was really lovely to hear. But, you know, we wanted to try and do something more. And we saw an initiative that had started in South Africa called the Street Store, which was essentially this sort of movement where you provided a dignified shopping experience to people experiencing homelessness. And it was almost this kind of thrift shop that they gave you the materials to create. And we decided to do that because we had this captive audience. And we set up this pop-up thrift shop in the middle of Fed Square in December 2014. And the idea was to provide a dignified shopping experience. And what ended up happening was we invited local homelessness services and clients that we've been speaking to, and then also our community online, to have this exchange where the community brought along either brand new clothing or good quality clothing that they were willing to part with. And then also the services encouraged their, clients to participate. And it was a wonderful exchange, and I think an awesome moment. But again, it was one day, and it was provision of clothing, and it was a start. But then it evolved into, okay, we saw so much value in terms of the dignity that was restored through that exercise. And we felt that the audience that we had was quite a younger demographic in terms of those who engage with the event itself. So we thought, why not try and create a clothing brand, right? We're on a run here. We're on a roll. We started a Facebook page. We did an event. And we didn't know any better at this point in time either. So mind you, we didn't have a lot of savvy, etc. But we decided to try and crowdfund to open a pop-up clothing store in Melbourne Central. We were going to trade for a month, and at the end of that month, we were going to close the doors to the public, and we were going to invite a local homeless service to come in and shop for free and have another adaptation of what was the experience in Fed Square, and we coined it the VIP Day shopping experience, where essentially our VIP customers are the people who are experiencing homelessness that get to come into our store and shop for free, get to choose 5 items, brand new clothing, haircuts, food, coffee, etc. And to fund that, we obviously were selling clothing. We had a number of brands donate some goods to us to sell in the store, but we also took the monogram from our Facebook page and we put it on some T-shirts. And that became the most popular product by a country mile, which was awesome to see. So we created a clothing brand, and we decided, what if we create a business, we create a social enterprise, and we use the profits, 100% of the profits from our sales, to keep doing these days. Because initially it was supposed to last for 1 month. It's now fast forward 8 years later. And the brand's gone from a couple of T-shirts with our monogram from our Facebook page to, you know, a standalone kind of well-regarded sort of streetwear business and label that obviously provides 2 things: our VIP Day shopping experience, but also on those days we had young people come in who were engaged in a service that was saying, "Hey, I love today. I'm finding it really enjoyable, the experience of interacting with your brand. But I need a job. You know, I'm finding it really hard to get work. I've got nothing on my resume. I've got no work experience, and I need employment." And at that point in time, we'd sort of gone from being voluntary for, I think, about a 6-month period and trying to run this store and working all hours to being able to provide paid casual employment to people. We thought, well, why not try and provide paid employment opportunities to our young people that we're interacting with these days? And that's really where we found ourselves. We know that retail is the biggest employer of young people in our country, and we know how overrepresented youth homelessness is. So that's really sort of the origins of where we find ourselves now, which is, you know, a standalone sort of streetwear clothing brand, which now provides these wonderful VIP Day shopping experiences, but also practical employment pathways for young people who are having this experience of homelessness. So sorry, that's a long story, but I think
that's great, Nick. No, it captures so much. Thank you for sharing that, because it's a story of obviously passion, innovation, seeing an opportunity, wanting to address an issue, and doing it in a unique way. It's so are all employees experiencing or have experienced homelessness? Is that the model where you generally
yeah, so the way the program works, so we have a number of staff who have lived experience, who work in the organisation, but the program itself, we work with a dozen young people per sort of 8-month cycle, and it's paid retail training and employment program where we sort of have co-designed and deliver a Cert 3 in business with a local RTO. So our young people get accreditation. They're obviously paid to study as well. We don't ask them to try and sacrifice between other commitments. And then also guaranteed paid employment, either working at our HoMie store or with one of our retail partners. So we work very closely with brands like Champion is a wonderful brand we work alongside, and also Nike. And we've sort of upskilled and equipped their staff to be able to adopt this empathetic employment practice to provide these opportunities to these young people. So right now, as of today, I think our young people next week have just done their month of induction and onboarding and all the rest of that, and started off with their Cert 3 study. And next week we'll be going out into the workplace and working in these environments and equipping themselves with the skills, competence, and experiences, obviously, to help with whatever comes next for them. So that's the way that the Pathway Alliance program runs.
That skills pathway is so critical, isn't it, to not only addressing an issue but empowering people to head off into their own independent direction. Jack, you're the funding manager, very important role for the organisation. What inspired you to want to work with HoMie, and what if you could share one or two stories that really drives home the passion that you feel for the work that you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a perfect fit in a lot of ways. I've got quite an unusual background of development work and high fashion. So I've been living in the States for a couple of years and came back to Melbourne, and a friend of mine had just started working at HoMie actually in an M&A capacity. And we got talking about it, and she just said, look, there's this amazing organization. I've been volunteering for them for years, and now I've just picked up this role. I think you should look into getting involved. Like, here's what they're about. And I think for me, it was the emphasis on the quality of work and the deep impact that really drew me to HoMie as much as anything else. I think there's a lot of other charities and organizations working in similar spaces, and they're quite happy to bump up numbers, or there's sometimes there can be a push to just try and help as many people as you possibly can, and we've got to do it. We've got to help everyone. Whereas HoMie is really about what we've always said is we can't be everything for everyone, but we can be something for someone. So we do this very intense, high quality work with a select group of young people every year, and we deliver genuinely life-changing results. And I think that's the really inspiring thing for me.
You're both obviously such, capable, intelligent men who could be doing anything, and I think it's so inspiring to meet men such as yourselves. And I've met quite a few now who are running or working in senior levels of NGOs, and the not only the passion but the sensitivity which this elicits, and it's generally been an industry where there's mostly women present, which is wonderful, and yet to see men rise up and say, no, I want to be part of something bigger than myself, I think is also symbolic of an important shift in masculinity overall, and how we define it. And I hope and believe that the work you're doing and who you are as individuals is also inspiring others to say, okay, let's not move into investment banking, even though you both perhaps could have, but didn't want to. But it sounds like that was never part of the journey, because you know, obviously the experience that you had. And sometimes when we look back on the breadcrumbs of our lives and we see what shaped us and led us in a certain direction, it can be very powerful. I'd love to dive deeper into the issue itself. And this is a question to either of you. What's currently happening in youth homelessness in Australia? Could you share numbers, what the trends are showing, and your sense of either hope or hopelessness that this is an issue we're going to be able to, mitigate significantly in our lifetimes, or not?
Sure. Yeah, no. Thanks, Jeremy, for the kind words. And I mean, very polite with the intelligence. I'm not sure about that, but look, we're having a go, obviously, and it's a wonderful place to be. I think we're so well supported by so many people and work with an incredible team of people from very diverse backgrounds as well. So we feel very fortunate to be in this environment. But I think, in relation to youth homelessness and what's happening, it's a situation that, homelessness is getting worse. We're also relying on information that is outdated. There's never actually an accurate sort of, as of today's source. We're operating off the most recent census, is sort of the key resource we have to look in terms of how we're treating. And the most recent census was released just a few weeks ago for 2021. And what it's shown is that homelessness has increased, and youth homelessness is also again, unfortunately, the issue itself is perpetuating and also getting worse. I think the statistic that we like to talk to, and we don't like to talk to it, it's just important to talk to it, is that people between the ages of 12 to 24 who are experiencing homelessness make up around 24% of the total homelessness population, but only 16% of the Australian population. So we know there is such a overrepresentation of young people. I think a key insight is that the most recent census again tells us that on any given night in Australia, there's over 122,000 plus people experiencing homelessness. We know that 58% of those people experiencing homelessness are under the age of 34. So it's actually the majority of homelessness itself is actually young people. And I think, again, there's another interesting and not a wonderful statistic whatsoever, not a great one, but to paint a picture, there's currently, again, according to the most recent census, around 8,000 people under the age of 12 years who are experiencing homelessness in Australia. So the issue is very real. It's very big. But at the same token, what I would say, flipping the coin, is that if we can tackle this issue, if we can break the cycle, if we can work very intently, very comprehensively in this particular area, we can hopefully break that wheel and prevent it from becoming a chronic issue for people. Because this is a space that, again, is so overrepresented, but it's just not acknowledged and recognised. But it needs to be a national priority, because this is a real viable, piece of the puzzle to solving this homelessness piece. But sorry, I'll defer to Jack as well with any thoughts.
No, you've honestly done the numbers I would have been using as well. I think the only other thing to really speak to is the fact that young people are considered a priority cohort regarding homelessness for the federal government. And yet we do still see consistently the numbers are climbing with every census. And it's also, it's considered across the board by everyone that the numbers given in the census wildly underestimate how many young people are affected by homelessness, because it doesn't take into account things like couch surfing, which is one of the most common incidences of youth homelessness. So when we're talking to stats like on any given night, 28,000 young people are affected by homelessness, that's likely a gross underestimation of what we're actually seeing. It's really bad, and despite being a priority cohort for a number of years now, there's no improvement.
Yeah,
I think that the story you've shared about meeting someone who was also went to private school shows how unexpected and life can be, and anyone could, under slightly different circumstances, find themselves in a position of not having a roof over their heads. I imagine one of the ongoing challenges is the ambivalence to these people from the community, a sense that somehow they're responsible, a sense that, I get quite worked up and even angry myself when it's that constant, you hear it in the background, they're drug dealers, or they're on drugs, or they're somehow a victim of their own series of poor choices rather than a victim of circumstance, which especially for a young person is mostly out of their hands. How do you respond to that? And do you believe the community is becoming less or more ambivalent to this issue?
It's a really good point, very well made. I think the gross assumption is that homelessness by far and large is largely caused as a direct result of substance and alcohol abuse is the biggest contributing factor. What's interesting is that it's actually the least biggest contributing factor in terms of reasons as to why someone is experiencing homelessness, often symptomatic of a broader issue. We know that lack of affordable housing and family breakdowns, family violence are the leading contributing factors towards homelessness and youth homelessness in Australia. And it's very unfortunate, obviously, as I say, that there is this narrative that is perpetuated through the mainstream media that it's people who are violent, who are out of control, who, as you say, are engaging in these behaviours. However, it just couldn't be more contrasted. We know, again, that as a collective, less than 10% of homelessness is as a direct result of substance and alcohol abuse. So and there's always a reason as to why someone might be participating in that sort of behavior, right? It's maybe there is so a mental health challenge or issue, someone's self-medicating, etc., whatever it may be. But it's just really unfortunate that is obviously what is the common assumption as to why someone is having this experience. But we know from the facts, from the data, from the information we have, which is conclusive, objective, that it is the least contributing factor. So we get pretty riled up, pretty motivated to try and really challenge that narrative, because homelessness doesn't discriminate. And like mental health, mental illness, right? Like, it can happen to anybody, and people are only a few steps away from a couple of things not going their way, the elements outside of their control. And we've even seen through, the COVID situation more recently, people, unfortunately, there's been a number of, family challenges, right, and breakdowns and whatnot, and it's been inflated, and we're only still seeing the residual kind of implications of these sort of external forces that are outside of our control. So, yeah, we really feel quite passionate about challenging that narrative, because it's actually not to quote Donald Trump, but it's fake news. It's actually not right. So that's our stance.
And I think there's a very important principle at stake here, which is that we are largely the product of circumstance rather than of our choices. Of course, over time, our choices cumulatively impact our lives, but unless we come from a solid foundation, which can be rocked unexpectedly at almost any moment, it could be any one of us under slightly different circumstances. And actually, having just come back from Cambodia recently myself, I know what it's like to meet the most extraordinary people who are in deeply under-resourced settings for no fault of their own, and therefore victims to trafficking and vulnerable to all sorts of challenges. So, incredible work you're doing as an organisation. The partnership that we've just set up, which is we're going to be supporting I Equal Change, your VIP days. Could you talk further about the funds that add up, where it goes, and the impact it has at both an organisational and an individual level for the people that you are serving?
Absolutely. I think like the VIP days, that's our original, impact program, where we've been able to support over 2,000 young people now through those days, and not donate and give away 10,000 items of brand new clothing, but actually have people come and choose that clothing at their own discretion. And that's a really important pillar of this impact program. So we're really grateful for the partnership, obviously, and we've, endeavoured to be able to paint a picture that, $100 donation enables a young person to come into our store and receive 5 items of brand new clothing. They get to choose at their own discretion. It's not, tattered secondhand sort of clothing. It's also being given to them, and this is what you get. You get to come in and choose whatever you'd like. And we have haircuts, and we have food, and we have coffee, and it's just a really lovely, dignified experience for often, what is a really challenging time that someone's going through. The other beauty of this program is that we have our graduates of our employment program who come back and co-facilitate that day. So it also operates as a very important mechanism for us to open up more awareness and pathways into our employment program, because we have this wonderful advocacy happening where someone comes in and they literally go from this side of the counter to this side, and they say, "Welcome to HoMie. I was actually here 8 months ago, and I came in on a VIP day, but now I'm working here and I'm living here, and you should apply." And it's a really powerful mechanism for us. It's sort of is that closed loop, as Jack spoke to around. We're really trying to make sure that we do things really well and thorough and comprehensively. So for us, those days operate, 12 times a year on a monthly basis. We often close to sort of the public. Sometimes we do outreach as well. We've done some rural VIP days in the past as well. But the idea is to connect with the community, to bring in and a local homelessness service who has clients that have these needs that don't get these experiences all that often, but to challenge again the notion of who a VIP who a VIP is, in our society, and we've really tried to flip that narrative on our head as people who traditionally haven't been able to have those opportunities as the people who we're prioritising as a VIP Day customer at HoMie.
I was visiting recently Thread Together, one of our partners, and traveling with them on their outreach day, and met a woman who didn't want to be photographed, understandably, or have her story told. And what was interesting was that she had a job, and yet she was just on the cusp of experiencing homelessness. Can you talk to that, Jack, in terms of your experiences of meeting? We tend to have these stereotypes, which I know we're breaking down through this conversation, but it's not always just one person living on the street, am I right? It could be someone who's just on the edge and may even be employed in some capacity, but is still needing to access the support and the services that you provide.
No, absolutely, and I think it's really well said, and it's one of the things that the census does do quite well. It does discuss the levels of homelessness you will experience. And that's especially prevalent with young people. There are the sort of chronic homelessness, which you will see, and that might be someone sleeping rough, but that's actually, it's the lowest percentage of people affected by homelessness. The majority are people who are in transitory housing. They're in extremely overcrowded dwellings. They are couch surfing, like I was speaking to. It's things like that. And again, the leading causes for this are loss of affordable housing, it's the loss of employment, it's family troubles, it's family breakdown, domestic violence. It's a lot of circumstances that are often very, very outside anyone's control, and they really can happen to anyone. And I think it's going to get worse. We're going to see it as we see these cost of living spikes go up. I was reading just the other day that the amount of rental accommodation available for less than $400 a week has halved by 50% in the last year alone. So we're seeing fewer and fewer instances of available, affordable housing for people, with real wage stagnation, increased cost of living, increased rents. People are just getting absolutely squeezed and struggling to meet ends through no fault of their own. It's a product of the society and the system that we're all experiencing.
So the additional funding, which we hope to begin to deliver shortly through the I Could Change online business partners, can you talk more, Jack, about the impact that's going to have on the organisation and on the people that you're working with and helping?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to go towards the VIP project. So VIP days, enabling us to really run them for young people across Melbourne who are facing a really hard time and need that day of confidence and community connection. Goes towards the clothing, the hairdressers, the beauty artists, and just really making it possible. Costs around $100 for every young person to make it possible for them to attend. So any contribution towards that will be amazing. In addition to the actual days themselves, we do work with support services slightly further afield from our store, and we deliver these VIP packs. So we'll connect to community support services. We'll ask them, who are you working with? Who are your young people? What are they like? What sizes are they? What are they into? And then we can really create a pretty cool customized pack for them. Leave a little note and just, again, have that moment of connection, even if we're not able to physically have them in store for whatever reason. So that's really and it's such a great, they're such lovely days, and it's such a great introduction to the broader HoMie ecosystem. So the more of them we can run, the better, honestly.
I reflect on many moments in my own life where I've been fortunate to come across people who are generally older than me, who've seen potential that I couldn't see myself, and have said something to me or opened up an opportunity which changed my life. It strikes me that that's what you guys are doing. That's what HoMie is doing when people might be at the lowest or one of the lowest points or most challenging times in their life. You're providing a safe place where people are being respected, supported, encouraged, given a pathway to employment. I think it's so important to not discount not only the physical impact of this, but the emotional and psychosocial support that this gives a person in their often most vulnerable times. Nick, is there a particular story around that stands out that you could share with us?
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, I mean, well said. I mean, I think as we sort of touched on, just a little bit before, that it's not doing everything for everyone. It's doing something for someone, and you like, confidence is currency, right? Like it's if you can instill that within an individual, that is rocket fuel. And I think for us, look, there's so many different stories. We've had people who've pursued careers in retail and worked their way up, sort of, the organizations that they found themselves in. We've had people who've gone into different industries. We've had people who've come back to the sector, which is often really lovely and touching, I think, where they've come back in the capacity as a youth worker because they know what an opportunity like HoMie has done for themselves, and those other organisations have supported them. They want to give back to other people as well, which is a really lovely sentiment. I think there's like a couple, but I even sort of, there was an individual, I think, in our first ever cohort who was absolutely outstanding, and they just excelled in the curriculum, and were awarded an awesome title in terms of this trainee program that we had provided. Then found themselves, and from a background of having sort of stable work and housing, etc., found themselves working in a senior role at Cotton On. It was the next port of call for them, and then they ultimately became the head genius at an Apple store in Melbourne. In the space of 2 years, managing staff of 50 plus. So those are the kind of the stories that I remember, and I think it just goes to show it doesn't take much. This notion of we provide unconditional positive regard, a strengths-based approach, and we meet underperformance with curiosity. Those three pillars. They instill confidence within an individual, and then they go off and excel in the world. And to know that those kind of things can transpire within such a short, period of time is really affirming. So, they're probably a couple of the moments I reflect on. But it just goes to show that, a little can go a long way.
I really like that. We meet underperformance with curiosity. It's not about being punitive, but asking what's going on for someone. And I would imagine the next question is, how can you assist?
Exactly. Imagine if every workplace did that, right? What kind of society would be in?
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, what do you most look forward to every day?
At HoMie or in life? I wake up and I'm in for coffee.
I'd love life to explore, although we've only got a few more minutes. So when you fire up the laptop in the morning and check in with the team, what most inspires you or excites you about the day ahead?
Yeah, honestly, it sounds pretty silly, and I'm sure a lot of people would say this, or maybe they wouldn't, but it's the people we work with at HoMie. It's a really extraordinary team. It's pretty small, but very tight-knit, just incredibly dedicated people who are really giving all of themselves, just going above and beyond every day to try and make a difference in our small corner of the world. I think it's inspiring, honestly. And the way that kind of culture feeds on itself, and everyone's just able to keep building each other up, picking each other up. If there's a bad day, or if someone's sick or away, we all just chip in, fill out, and make it work. I just think it's a really extraordinary culture. I've never experienced anything quite like it. And it's a real testament to Nick and the other founding members of the team for what they've built and been able to sustain.
Nick, how about you? When you look back on your life, hopefully many years from now, both personally and professionally, what will you be most proud of?
For me, it's always it's not what we do, it's the way we do it. And I think, those pillars that we just spoke to and those principles, approaching your work in life with those tools, I just think they make you a happier, better, more fulfilled person. So I think I really am proud of, as I say, the way we've gone about this challenge and the spirit in which we've engaged with it. We've dared to do things differently, but we've also applied our passion and our logic. And, lo and behold, it delivers and yields these wonderful outcomes. So I think I would also, say that everyone has bad days. We, still have tough days out, on a personal note. And as I say, I, on a daily basis, manage a mental illness. And there are days where I don't want to get out of bed, right? But working here makes it a lot easier than if I was working elsewhere, as you said. If I was, I don't want to downplay anywhere else and whatnot, but if I was in a different environment that I wasn't doing what I'm doing here, it just makes it a bit easier. It makes life more enjoyable. I've got purpose. So I think it's nice. I think a lot of people spend their whole lives trying to find something, and this found us, and we're fortunate we found it. Whilst we're still relatively, don't let the bald heads deceive you, quite young.
I can tell that you're young and passionate, and really with a deeply inspiring path behind you and ahead of you. And I think what you've just shared also highlights how following your heart, even when there's no clear path forward, ultimately the path becomes clear when you remain committed to being of service to others. And that, of course, is a principle that has motivated some of the great impact leaders of our time. And we love to sort of look back historically at some of the greats like Gandhi, but there's incredible people today, such as yourselves and many others that I've met, who are walking that path today. And your journeys will naturally continue to evolve, as will the organisation. But it is a real privilege, isn't it, to be able to be of service and to do work that is not just about ourselves, but about others, especially in such a time of a fragile time and a time of great need, both locally and globally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just hard to see yourself doing anything differently, right? Like that's just what it is. So it's very kind of you to say it, and I think hopefully, a key takeaway, like I would always implore, like if we can do this, I think anyone can really, truly. Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Really grateful for your time today, and keep up the great work. We look forward to launching this partnership as we are. And beginning to provide some hopefully significant support for your work and for the people that you're serving.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with you. Thanks for your time.
Our pleasure. Thank you.